it was a semester before Yale did it as well, and so I think that's maybe a point of congratulations. And I think that this gender-neutral housing is something which really embodies the spirit of Yale and US, where we come into this college knowing that we are in a safe space, where we are able to change certain things that maybe we have problems with, that we don't really see the justifications and the reasons for, and that we don't agree with. And I think the fact that student government was able to change such a policy, was able to have, there was a whole lot of publicity for it in Singapore and at Yale itself. And so I think that they were able to do that, showed the significance of this achievement.
I think a significant battle that happened across two student governments, I believe, was the infamous mascot selection. I know a lot of pain and heartbreak went into that whole arduous process, but in the end, a mascot was chosen, the Kingfisher. And so I think the choosing of that as a mascot, amid all the controversies, was a great achievement, and I hope that's something that this government can run with in the implementation.
Well, I agree with the running with, and that's definitely something that also was a big part of Avery's campaign. But for me, I thought we could have, as a student body, we may have lost a lot in that process of getting to the mascot. So I do see it as an achievement, but the even bigger achievement, as Sada said, is the gender-neutral housing, because that is what defines Yale and US, and that is truly something that that the quickness at which we got that task done, of having dean of students, supporting dean of students, student organizations, and the student government all work together. They're all on the same page and getting something that was almost. They made that process seem almost inevitable, that it would get done, and they lived up to what they promised. So I hope to do things in that similar fashion.
So I think the two issues to me that really are achievements for the previous two student governments was, as Sasa mentioned, gender-neutral housing. But for me, it's an achievement not so much on what it achieved, but rather the process on which it was achieved as an issue, that it was raised by students and student government picked it up. And I feel that is where student government can come in, because again, like when Migna and May brought it up, they didn't really know whether it was just them or whether it was a few other people or maybe the whole school. And they did the research, but they brought it to student government picked it up and was the center who collated the information and brought it to senior management. So that is, I think, a real achievement as to what student government can do. And I think the second issue is the library issue. I know that the current situation, many people feel have a variety of opinions about it, but really to me it's an achievement because it did achieve the goals. And we can revisit it again in the future. We definitely will be revisiting it in the future. But I do think it is an achievement because it was a difficult decision to make, but it was made and the goal was achieved. And I think, despite the fact that some members of the previous student government may have suffered some blowback from it, but I really admire the guts for sticking with it, even though it was a difficult decision.
We'll stick with you actually, Tim. So on the library, do you think that was the correct decision?
I want to say that it was the correct decision for the time in which it was made, and that it was made quite at the last. It was a reactionary issue, and I guess because I wasn't here this semester, so I was following it through my friends. But it is, in my opinion, that it was the correct decision made at that time, and I feel that it's testament to the nimbleness of the student government, as well as the flexibility that we are open to revisiting the issue in the future as issues like this do pop up frequently.
Can I comment on that as well?
In a second. Can we actually go to Subhash next? So Subhash spoke about the language we use in approaching NUS. Can I ask you the same question in regards to the library and the space, and how we should treat, not only how should NUS treat us, but how should we treat NUS?
So I think some of the language itself has gone through some revision also, and there was a process in which, before we got to this point where seats are only reserved, I'm not sure the exact language, but I know that it is very obvious when you're an NUS student, when you enter the library, that you are not welcome. And NUS students do take classes at Yale and US, use our resources, and that is something that I feel when we talk about language, it is important because students are going to use those as signposts. So they're going to refer to those signs. They're going to say it's a policy. It's easy to point to that language, and that is deemed as the official message that our school is sending to NUS. So I feel revisiting that, just thinking about better language when we go about how our security, even how our security guards are trained to ask for ID. That's really important. I feel we need to talk about that with infrastructure and security. So the language, not just in wording, the language in how we discuss this important relationship. That's very important.
But just to clarify,
Yes.
there's a difference between semantics and the message that
Yes.
it's sending. Are you
Yes.
happy with the message as it is?
As it is, I think it can be improved, and so I am not entirely happy with the message.
So what message would you prefer?
I would prefer a message that that is very clear about which spaces they could use and which resources are available, and a message that isn't so in your face to NUS students. So perhaps if it's something that it could be a softer reminder on the door, if it's something that we understand as students where we want NUS students to fit into this college space, our library, a common space, and some would argue even a public space. So understanding exactly how the students want that relationship, what administration, what capacity, what limitations has administration set for that, and then determining perhaps if that is if that language is accurate to where we want to be as a college in that relationship, sure. As it is as an individual, I think that message could be improved, and we'll see what the student government and the student body thinks before trying to improve or implement your message.
Sure. So the reason we're pushing you on this a little bit is because you were quite vocal during the incident about, during the blowback and during this period, in being very clear that this was a Yale NUS space, and it
Correct.
seems that you're revising that a little now.
Yeah, correct, absolutely. So when I was here the first time, before I went for summer abroad, and this is exactly why I think having a student, a president who is from the class of 2017 is really important in student government. This is a personal growth, personal development issue for me. When I first used the library, I subscribed to the belief that this is a Yale NUS space, and we were asserting our identity as Yale NUS students by not having NUS students at this space, at this campus in certain times. And since then, I have changed my position on this issue because I think that we lose much more than we gain. We gain this space, this study area, and at that time I believe that we were we were telling Yale NUS students that this was their right when this was something that they were entitled to. But I do believe right now that we do have a lot of spaces on campus. And how that how it has manifested itself through language, through people's behaviors, and how this conversation is going on social media. I do think it's time to revise. I have gone back on. I have revised how I see this issue, and I think that it's important that we, as a community, see how we want to think about this issue now.
Thank you. Avery, do you want to point?
So a bit of context. So I was on the committee which met with Ken Panko to discuss this issue last semester, right? Yeah, last semester. And so I had from the beginning advocated moderation and working out a deal that wasn't all or nothing. But because many students were very vocal and very passionate about no, NUS cannot come in, we decided to go with the nuclear option, if you will, just to show people what it looked like and what pretty much complete exclusion looks like. And I mean, we'll have to talk to the student body if people are okay with the way, how that reflects on a relationship with NUS, but I've always advocated for, kind of a middle way, kind of similar to what Subhash is saying, I think, wherein perhaps the library is reserved for Yale NUS students during specific periods, during specific times, but I also think that sharing our library space can be a way of Yale NUS reaching out to the Newtown community and showing that we're not as elitist and exclusionary as they think.
Sure. Thank you. Everyone's happy? Can we move on to the next? Perfect. So can I ask, the VP candidates, can you tell us about your other commitments and how fully you'd be able to commit to this role as Vice President if you were elected?
I mean, just speaking this semester-wise, if you all don't know, this is my first semester back actually, so really this is my
Talk a
only
bit louder.
Oh, it's not working? Okay, so this is my only major commitment, really, student government. I'm not involved currently with any of the student organization, except for an editorial role with affairs by Yaba, but that's basically it.
Okay, thank you. Avery?
So upon making the decision to run for student government, I had to scale back on my leadership commitment to something I really love, which is ballroom. Similarly, even though I am serving on the Elm College Council, I see that more as an advisory role to help the Constitution be implemented, and that's why I want to stay, and I absolutely will, fulfill my duties on the Elm College Council. But I've taken a back seat in many of the other organizations of which I am a part in order to step up in student government. So I would say this is, my top priority.
Cool, thank you. Now we have another one open to to everyone. In what ways can we improve SIPE, especially in regards to its transparency to students and its effectiveness in being a college organisation for professional experiences?
Okay, so to answer the question, in what ways we can improve SIPE, I think in what ways we can improve our relationship with SIPE as a government, we can definitely. There has been multiple issues, as many of you might know, about like SIPE and information, emails being leaked, students being unhappy with selection processes of SIPE. I think what we can do is we can request for better accountability on SIPE's behalf. They are also a unit in our school that has undergone change, from leadership to having many new staff coming in who are also understanding this process of what it means to work in a school like Yale US. So being very clear to them about what the student government is about, what the student government is trying to achieve, and informing them that this is a platform that they can use to reach out to students too. I was having a conversation with Charlotte the other day about opportunities for scholarships, and she asked me why so few members of the class of 17 applied for a scholarship opportunity, and I mentioned that not many people knew about it, and that sometimes while emails are the official way to send information, to share information, student government can have an active role, and a liaison with SIPE is going to be very crucial in moving forward, because SIPE, our lives are more than the 4 years we spent here, and SIPE is a very important support system moving forward. So that, and also student feedback about week 7s. I know some people who, there are always people who are going to be upset with their selections, and SIPE does things every year, every level they have events. So I think just helping them better understand where the students are, what the students expect, and what the students can expect of SIPE. So it's all about communication and transparency for me.
Sure.
So I think, so I just share a personal anecdote. So in my fresh year, I was rejected for the summer language scholarship, and when I went to ask SIPE, because they are very open to feedback, and like they like to ask, to give you like the reasons why you weren't accepted, so that you can try again next semester, and hopefully get a better application. And the main reason is because they said that I used a very cliched quote, so by Malala, one book, one pen, one child can change the world. And so I feel like this is a rather arbitrary sort of criteria and evaluation. And I think there can be further clarity as to exactly how SIPE judges students' applications, what sort of criteria, what sort of really checks are they using to make sure that the processes of giving opportunities to students, giving funding to students is something which is the most fair and effective manner. And I think this is something that the student government can work with SIPE on. There was also, in the previous, in Regina and Scott's government as well, there was a liaison with SIPE from the student government. And I think I remember doing surveys about SIPE last semester. But I think this feedback did not transform into anything, to things which were very tangible. And so I feel like this is something which the student government can work on to really push through and go ahead, steamroll ahead with whatever it is, that feedback that we get, and whatever policy changes or discussions that need to be held, and then make tangible change from there to as far an extent as we can as possible. And I agree with Subhash about our relationship with SIPE, and I think that's something crucial that the government has to work on. I think having that people-to-people relationship, building that rapport is so important to get things done, to get decisions made most fairly, effectively, most quickly. And so I think the two main things are transparency, accountability, and really the relationship with SIPE.
I see there are two ways about fixing that relationship with SIPE. I think the first one is quite a short term solution, which is to really build sort of reevaluate what student expectations are and working with the SIPE SAC in terms of setting those expectations. Because I feel sometimes younger students do come in with a certain sense of entitlement, and SIPE is really that first sort of door that will be shut in their face for many opportunities if they apply for a lot of them. So I feel it is working with the SAC and SIPE in terms of how to set student expectations, whether that be through better communication, clearer communication, or just better guidelines or advice on how to work with a SIPE advisor in terms of achieving your goals. And I think the second way of building a relationship is a more long-term solution, which is working with how SIPE communicates, how the student government as well as the student body communicates with SIPE in terms of what they want from SIPE, what they hope to achieve in their time at Yale and US. And I do think that the student government has a role to play hand in hand with the SAC in terms of communicating with SIPE, and I think that sort of reinforces the point that Subhash and Saza made about transparency and accountability with SIPE.
Yeah, obviously echo the sentiments on transparency, accountability, and perhaps criteria which are obvious and available to students on how opportunities are handed out. Also, I think instead of seeing SIPE as an other, I think we can increase our person-to-person relations with them through perhaps meeting with the SIPE advisors more frequently. I think that's something we as students can do better at reaching out, and I also think that's something that SIPE can do a bit better about as well. Really making the SIPE advisor a key role in determining where a student is headed, both in their years here, whether that be study abroad, not study abroad, summer opportunities, etc. And I've talked with a lot of members of SIPE. I had a summer research here, so I got to meet Jana, my SIPE advisor is Adele, and they're all very willing to talk. So I think if both sides make the effort to make those personal connections, that will also help facilitate communication in addition to increasing transparency on a bureaucratic level.
Thank you. Saza, so you spoke, we asked the question, what portfolio would you go for? You said events, but looking at your campaign, it's very much centered around sort of a culture of care and a lot of student life. Why do you think you need to go for president rather than just director of student life?
I think as president, you'll have more power to really impact all parts of student life. So during my campaign, I did have a heavy emphasis on the culture of care and like the welfare of the student body. And I think this extends to much more than just student life in terms of events and things that the director of student life would do, but also extends way more into academics. I think these sort of things where where students can really feel that the school care for them in all aspects. I think this is where the culture of care can be first built on. And so I think that by being president, I'll be able to steer the direction of the student government. And so in this way, I will be able to steer it into a direction which focuses on the culture of care at Yale and US. And I think that is much more effective than simply focusing on student life.
Thank you.
Okay, so this question is for the presidential candidates, and we'll be opening up the floor to questions from everyone soon. Can you talk about a time, a specific project where you have worked closely with the administration to get something done? Because a lot of you talk about getting things done, right? So this is only for the two presidential candidates. So did you work to tell us about the issue, what you wanted done? Did you work together or alone? And then how did you ensure that your idea was what students wanted?
So I'll share with you all the turning point, I guess, of my experience here at Yale US. Again, I said it many times, this is my highlight of my Yale US career so far. It's the orientation committee that I served on for the class of 2019. This is a position that I worked really closely with the Dean of Students, all the way up to President Lewis, who was the guest speaker at our housewarming event, to Dean's Fellows who had just arrived on campus, to public affairs when designing the logo. We worked with everyone in school. Basically, we had the most experience of those in campus of working with these different administrations. So it's hard to say why I joined orientation was because I started noticing like diverse hints of international local student divide, of a lack of camaraderie between the different batches of students. And this is part of my campaign. It was a dorm room conversation between Kavya and myself, who was also on OCOM. We submitted our applications. We even appended the ideas that we had that we were going to put added on to the previous orientations. And housewarming event was one of these events. And so we worked really hard to, hello? Yeah. So we worked to completely reinvigorate what it means to have a Yale and US orientation, to be the architects of a student's first impressions of Yale and US, and to basically in that 2-week stretch that we had, show them what living in Singapore was like, what campus life is like, and what it means to be a part of this community. So that was why I did it, and it was a response to what we were noticing as leaders in our community. So that was one aspect that I had to work very closely, and the relationships that I've built through doing orientation, through the smaller events, with working with Dean's Fellows and working with the different administrative staff in our school. Even dining hall manager, Chin Wan is a great, who is the dining hall manager. She's brilliant, and she has. There was a night where the orientation event ended late, and we had to come back way past 8:30, and she helped us hold on to dinner. So these are relationships that I've built that I feel are very important, that are going to be influential in my leadership with student government, and orientation is that example that I would like to share. Yeah.
Okay, I think for mine, it would be last semester. So I was pushing for a culture of community service at Yale and US, and so I approached the Dean of Students. I talked to Andrew and Christopher Bridges, and so what we really decided was that when the freshies came to Yale and US, the first thing that they should be, one of the first few things that they should be exposed to, that they should really care about, is community service and culture of care at Yale and US. So I was at the Yale trip for the student exchange in February, and I think what we realized was that there was a lot of, so at Yale, there is a community service culture. People come into Yale realizing that this is an important part of the Yale experience and that they need to take part in it. And so that was something which I really wanted to bring back to Yale and US, and so I spoke to Dean Bridges and the DOS, and they were really supportive of this initiative. And so we gathered all the different service groups in Yale and US, and we had a lot of lunchtime meetings just to discuss how best shall we put forth this sort of orientation, which includes partly a volunteering, a community service aspect. And we were really close to getting it done, but unfortunately because of logistical issues, because people weren't around and all that, so we couldn't, but we kept it in view for sometime this semester. So there are plans to do it perhaps in the next 2 months, to have a community service day. And I think Compact, I would really like to commend the work that Compact is doing in building this community service culture. And that is really something which I think has really bonded the student body together, which really allows the organizations to work together as well.
Okay, so, yeah, we can. So we're about to open for questions after this one. Could you have it like written down and concise, please? Thank you. So which one are we asking?
So we're asking the presidents, so each presidential candidate, so why do you
Actually,
think...
we'll ask both sets.
Okay.
So why do you think you're a better candidate than the other candidate?
Yeah, and keep it short.
Yep.
No examples.
Okay.
Or anecdotes.
Well, I'll answer this question. I put a post on Facebook a little bit about this earlier today. I think it's because of my experience, my wealth of experience working from day one, building up this college, building up this community with my peers, those relationships, those experiences, understanding exactly what the capacity is for what we can do. Adding that like touch of like realism to a lot of idealism that is around like first years and what they want to do with this college. Like just understanding what we can do and what's the best way to go about doing those things, how not to lose people in that process. So that's why I think I'm a better candidate, and also it would be because of my big pictures for big ideas for student government. I want to reinvigorate it. I want people to feel that by serving in student government, they can really change. This is an efficient, streamlined operation that is well organized and well oiled. So that's why. It gives us a chance to tell you.
I think like I am excited to work with you because of the 1 year experience that you've had, and I really hope that I can see that we will work very well together in government. And so I think perhaps one thing that I feel might be slightly better at than Subhash, and I think you are great at this.
Don't worry about it.
I think it's really management skills. So I think my leadership philosophy is to encourage the heart and lead by example. And I think these are things which people really cherish and they appreciate and are very grateful for. And so I'm very able to really rally people around a certain mission and a vision, and for them to really believe in it themselves and not only have it imposed on them, but to really want to change something, want to do something. And that is something which I feel the student government must have, because the student government is an advocate for the student body. So if the student government does not have that sort of burning passion, that wanting to really do the lot for the school, to really work hard for the school, to have that dedication, that discipline and determination, then I think some things will be lost. So I feel like that is one thing. Yeah.
I believe I'm the better candidate for the vice presidential role because I come into this role with a single goal of getting the job done. I come in fully ready to support the president, and I think that's really all the skills you need, essential skills you need to serve in this role.
So I think why I am more qualified to be vice president is because I am here to resolve conflict. I think the role of the vice president is not necessarily the role of an open dissenter, but a supportive role. And I think, I don't know if any of you were at Elm College, but recently there was an issue brought up on Facebook on something that Elm College office had done that people were not happy with. And I was able to peacefully resolve that dispute, both ending the Facebook war and addressing the actual concern. So I think that's why I would be a better vice president. In addition, I know some people may see my youth or I'm only a sophomore as a detriment, but given the composition of our student government, I think it's a benefit. I see the role of the vice president as being able to help direct and manage the government and help execute the president's vision. And I think that I am close enough to the freshman batch that I can relate to them, help collate their ideas, keep them in check. And I think I would be better at that as a vice president than my counterpart.
Awesome, thank you. Opening to the floor. Who has a question?
So I have a question.
2, 3.
I have a question for the two presidential candidates. Both of you talked about listening to students and communicating with students' needs and expectations, but judging from tonight's turnout, and also based on what I've observed over the years, the interest levels in political or student government issues have been declining. Do you have a plan to address this political apathy, or if this sort of face-to-face, open, town hall style conversation is not something that students are the most keen about at this moment, what kind of alternative platforms or venues would you propose to make students feel more involved in the student government?
So Ihao and I know we attended town hall upon town hall in our first year, and when we had a smaller community, it was so much easier to get people. And even if half of the students showed up, it's still a lot of the students. There's a lot of students whose voices are heard. I feel there has been growing apathy since then to now, and I'm very happy you all are here, but also there's so much more seats that need to be filled. I think the one way that we're going to get people is through action, through doing things, through showing people that that student government is here for them, that as we go about this year, getting things done and keeping students and administration in the process of getting things done, communicating the things that student government does, because I know that student government does a lot of work, and sometimes that, be it in minutes or some ways that student government can actually show students that we're working on this, or your feedback is received and this is what we're going to do, and keeping students updated throughout that process. That's one way I think that will definitely get these seats to be filled. Showing them that what we can do, showing as a team what we can do, and